Hi, everybody. My name is Fred Hadley, and this interview is going to be with the candidate for District 81 State Representative, Kelly Skidmore. And we're doing this on behalf of the Village Sentry, which is a newsletter that goes to the residents of Sentry Village, Boca Raton, which is an over 55 active adult community. How are you this morning, Kelly?
Doing well, thank you, Fred. Thanks for having me on your program.
Okay, sure. Let's start right off the bat with all politics is local, they say, so let's start with a local question. First of all, correct me if I'm wrong, or maybe both of your previous stints in the legislature, did you not represent this community, Sentry Village?
I did, yes, it was House District 90 then. It's since been redrawn during reapportionment, and so now it's part of District 81, as well as a number of other communities and neighborhoods.
Now, of your two terms, which I think were, what were they now, 86 to
2006 to
I'm sorry,
2010.
2006 to 2008, then you were reelected.
Yes.
2008 to 2010. Which, if not both, of those two terms did you represent Sentry Village?
Both.
Okay, so you're a friend of Sentry Village. Can we use that?
Longtime friend, yes.
All right, very good. Now then, we'll start off with the local question. What are the three issues as far as an over 55 active adult community, which Sentry Village Boca Raton is, that would be the key issues that you'd like to talk about, that you're trying to get people in Sentry Village to vote for you? What are the three hot button issues that would appeal most to my constituents and hopefully your constituents when you're elected?
Well, I think number one is healthcare, and it always will be. Access to healthcare and to affordable prescription medications to be able to live a high quality of life is extraordinarily important. So making sure that we're making policy decisions at the highest level that don't negatively impact anyone's ability to get the healthcare that they need, to be able to have transportation to that healthcare, and to have the doctor that they want through their insurance. So there's a couple different prongs to that in terms of policy, but overarching, healthcare is number one. I think that despite what many people would automatically assume, seniors are very concerned about education. They always have been. So many of that senior population are retired teachers, and they have a very keen sense of what is happening in our public education and are very concerned that we are diverting public dollars to private schools. So that's another concern that may not seem obvious. I think that transportation, driver's licenses, making sure, we don't have a very strong public transportation system in South Florida or anywhere in Florida. You guys are very fortunate in Sentry Village, but in other places that don't have that bus system, and as you age and your reflexes don't allow you to continue having a driver's license, you can become very housebound because there is not a lot of opportunity for public transportation. Uber has changed that a lot, but it is costly. So public transportation to make sure that people can get where they need to go, get their grocery shopping done, get to their doctor's appointments, have a social life. Those things I think are important to the senior citizen population.
Okay. Now, you started off with health care. Of course, that's the key issue, not just in South Florida, but in the world today and what's going on. Let's talk briefly about the COVID-19 situation. And in particular, the Palm Beach County Commissioners voted unanimously last week to require masks in what they call public places. There are one or two notable exceptions. One is not that controversial, and it says if you're outdoors exercising and you can keep your distance, then you don't need to wear a mask if you're jogging or bicycling and so on and so forth. But there are two other exceptions that I find very troubling, and just run that by you. One of the exceptions is, of course, for medical exemption. And it's not clear how a person would qualify for a medical exemption or what medical exemptions would be qualifying. And already there are a number of cards going around on the internet that purport to be official medical mask exemption cards. The other notable exception is for religious purposes. So my question to you is, do you support, first of all, the Palm Beach County Commission's unanimous decision to require public masks? That's a simple.
I do. I have been saying for a week or so now, it's not too much to ask that everyone do their part and make sure we all stay safe.
Okay. Now, so the follow-up would be, should there be any exceptions? Let's talk about, I want to talk about religious exemption. The reason why I want to start with that is one of the original orders shut down the state said that essential businesses or services, and they quoted like grocery stores, hospitals, obviously utility companies, transportation, will remain operating. And they also, Governor DeSantis included religion. What's your view on that? Is religion, do you think, in the context of the current pandemic, do you believe that that is a legitimate or should I say essential service?
So the religions that I am familiar with, I don't know what the exemption would be for. So if there are other reasons why, I am not familiar with them. I certainly wouldn't want to trample anyone's religious freedoms in any way, but I'm just not familiar with what part of wearing a mask violates any religious protocols or covenants. So I would need some additional education on that.
Right,
it's
sure.
something I'm not
well,
familiar with.
ironically, you know, for many years we've been told that certain religions, usually Islamic, require face coverings. All of a sudden,
Right, I know about that.
we're hearing the exact opposite. But
Right. And I'm just
I
not
have no
familiar with
familiarity
religions that
either.
require that.
Whether or not you're familiar, just from a common sense point of view.
I think religious leaders have great influence over their congregations, and that they would encourage safety first over anything else. In the lack of information that I have in any religion that would have an opposition to a face covering, I think most religious leaders would want their congregants to stay safe. So I think that they would do that. They would suggest that wear a mask. It's not just for you, it's for other people, it's for the community at large, it's to keep the numbers down. And I think most leaders would deliver that message.
Right, all right, but just on a practical basis, somebody goes into Publix and they're told you can't come in without a mask. If that person says it's against my religion, how should the store handle it? Let's talk about it from a corporate policy. I don't mean the individual worker. Certainly we don't want to see fights.
So it's,
how should the store, as a matter of
essentially-
policy, handle that? Somebody says,
Sure.
my religion prevents me from wearing a mask and I'm entitled to shop here, so get out of my way. How should the store handle that?
Well, the store has rights to. There's not an entitlement that you can walk into a private company. There is no such thing. If they have requirements, then they are allowed to enforce those requirements. If they have, pardon me, if there is a no shoes, no shirt, no service sign on the window, you can't come in if you're not wearing shoes and a shirt. If there is you have to wear a mask, you have to wear a mask. And the business has every right to enforce that policy that it has established. The person who has the religious objection does not have to shop there. they can find other alternatives of places that would allow them to enter without a mask.
All right. While we're on the subject of religion, do you believe in the separation of church and state?
100%, absolutely, unequivocally.
Okay. So now let's get into specifics. Are you familiar with the state motto of Florida?
I should be. I'm drawing a blank.
All right. All right. Well, it's okay, because until I researched it this morning, I didn't know. In God we trust.
In God we trust. Yeah, that's what I thought it might be. It's also
All right.
on our money.
Right.
So,
Now,
yes.
by the way, I'm a firm believer in the First Amendment, and a lot of people don't realize this, but the very first thing mentioned in the First Amendment is freedom of religion, even before free speech and freedom to
Right.
So I certainly agree that this is what the country was founded on. This is the rules of the republic, that you have the freedom to worship. My problem is when it becomes incorporated or inculcated into daily life for other. For example, I happen to be an atheist. I'm not ashamed to say it, and I don't consider myself evil or malevolent person. I do believe in the golden rule: do unto others as you would have them do unto you, and I try to guide myself in what you would call a spiritually acceptable or manner. But I have a problem when I take a dollar bill out of my pocket. It says, "In God we trust," which, by the way, was not always on the currency. I don't know if you know the history of that. The motto, "In God we trust," was put in on American currency in the 50s.
50s is what I thought.
It was also added to the pledge. Not in the
That's
original,
another
when
one.
they
I
say
was
one
hoping you
nation
would bring
under
that one up
God.
too.
And
That was
back in the
added as well.
50s, I'm old enough to just barely remember this. We had a senator, not a Florida senator, but a U.S. senator named Joseph McCarthy, and there was this whole he was against, calling everybody communist, and was all this push to make religion part of American society. So that's when they added God. And so would you be in favor of removing the term trust from American currency, which is obviously a national issue? It's not something that Florida would do. And moving it and or removing it from the Pledge of Allegiance and going with the traditional look of our currency, which seemed to serve well for many years. How do you feel?
So it is a complicated issue, and it really draws a lot of passion on both sides. As just a point of reference, I have a sibling who is an atheist, so I understand the thought process. I was raised a Catholic. I recently discovered that my heritage also includes Russian Jew, being a Russian Jew. So I'm learning more about the Jewish religion than ever before. Of course, I've been immersed in it here in South Florida as a legislative aide to Ron Klein and as a elected official representing a predominantly Jewish district. So it's been an honor to have attended a service, and my daughter has been to Shabbat service and things like that. So we very much have incorporated religion into our lives. But I would never want to impose that upon someone else who doesn't believe it. I don't know that there is enough support to remove those things, but I certainly think that there are a number of people who do think that they don't belong there. Those words and that language doesn't belong in our Pledge of Allegiance or on our money or in our state motto. And I respect those thoughts and those beliefs. I think it's worthy of a public dialogue and worthy of a decision that needs to be made. But again, I think people are very sensitive to it, and it's not an easy decision. If it came down, if you push, came to shove, I would say that in order to be fair to all people, maybe it should. Its time has come.
Okay, fair enough. By the way, the closest historical analogy I can give you is at one time they used to permit prayer in public schools.
Sure.
Take a break somewhere in the morning and say, we'll now have our daily prayer. And the problem is those students who did not want to participate would then be castigated or made.
Sure.
There's
And
something
believe
wrong
me,
with them.
I've stood with many of my colleagues in the Florida House and when I was a legislative aide in the Florida Senate against those bills that allowed or promoted school prayer. And so I would continue absolutely to fight against those that are almost, I just think they're ever present. Those kinds of pieces of legislation are filed all the time. And we have to be vigilant to protect against them.
Okay, on a related subject, yesterday, this is the flag of not our neighboring state, but a couple states over, Mississippi. And this is the only state in the union that has what they call an overt reference to
Confederate flag, yeah.
Confederate flag. And the Mississippi legislature, in a bipartisan move, just yesterday, that they're going to change the design of their flag. Do you support that move?
Sure, I definitely do. I know there are a lot of people who are, they've kind of drawn this line. You can't change history. You can't rewrite history. And I agree with that. You can't. We have to learn it. We have to know it. We have to recognize what we did right and what we did wrong. But knowing and understanding and even embracing history does not mean you can't change, does not mean that you don't grow and you don't have progress forward. So as we become to realize more and more how many of these images and icons in our society that are triggers for other people who have embraced, who are Americans, who have some fear of those icons. Yeah, we have to have that conversation. I know, there are so many leaders from throughout history who we have held up, and we're starting to realize that they had very racist proclivities or things that not to be proud of. But we have to look at what was happening at the time, the whole person, the good deeds and the bad. But certainly I'm sensitive to trying to promote something that is offensive to a very large population in our country. And we need to, be progressive about this.
Okay,
it's
fine.
not to erase anything that's happened before, but to embrace what we know now as a nation and how we build unity.
Sure. Okay. So continuing in this vein, so this is the what's going to be the former flag of Mississippi. And now
Right.
the state of Florida flag looks like.
Right.
Now, there's controversy on whether this is simply an X, or I think the technical term is a saltire, S-A-L-T-I-R-E, or whether it's supposed to be reminiscent of the X in the Confederate flag. Do you think that the Florida flag needs a redesign, that it's too close for comfort?
The Florida flag, when I look at it, it doesn't make me think of the Confederate flag. That's not to say it doesn't make other people think of the Confederate flag. If there's a better design, I don't see why we have to dig our heels in and keep things exactly the way they are. I am totally fine with changing things. And, again, I think that just by moving forward, we're not declaring that all our history was bad. If there is a better design that makes everyone feel inclusive, then let's look at it. I just don't see why we have to dig our heels in over these kinds of issues. There's so many more issues that the legislature can deal with, that we should be dealing with, but certainly anything that makes any one of our communities feel less than or not supported, we need to look at that.
What about renaming Dixie Highway? You have any feeling on that?
You know, we rename roadways and highways all the time. We name them for people. We name that, we try, you know, there's sort of a rule of thumb to not name a road until someone has passed, just in case they do something not great in their future. But again, I don't see a reason why we have to keep things the way they are just because that's the way they've always been.
I think a section of Dixie Highway, I think in Riviera Beach, was renamed Boulevard. So there's already been some.
Sure.
By the way, on a related subject, the Dixie Chicks have renamed themselves. Have you heard?
The Chicks.
Chicks, right? And
Yes.
but
And so did Lady Antebellum. And
yes,
so I
that's
think
right.
we're all becoming aware of these words, these
Right,
sometimes,
right.
you know, dog whistle words that are offensive to
Right.
so many people. So
What
let's be
exactly?
sensitive.
What do we mean by a dog whistle? I know what it means, but for our viewers that
Well, I think that it means that it's a word that seems innocuous to those who don't see it in the historic way that a lot of other people see it as, you know, a Southern vocabulary that means enslavement, that represents slavery, that represents oppression. And so those are kinds of what I believe are called dog whistle words.
Sure. Okay, now, just to finish up this subject, besides the X being reminiscent of the Confederate flag, there's the seal of the Florida. By the way, the history of the flag is originally the flag was white, but somebody called it the flag of surrender. So that's when they added the X. You said, well, we'll put a red X in it, and this way nobody thinks Florida is surrendering. But in the middle of it is the seal. I'll bring this up. Well, this is the original coat of arms, or before there was a state flag, there was a coat of arms. And
yeah, with the mountains in the back.
with the mountains in the background, and with the supposed Native American Seminole female wearing a feather on her cap, which they never did. The females never wore feathers, and she's throwing flowers on the ground. First seal was designed, they still had the mountains, but they took the feather out of the Native American's cap. And of course, there's the motto on the bottom, which is the state motto, "In God We Trust." But they still felt this wasn't quite accurate. So the current seal that we have, they flattened out the mountains, changed the cocoa tree to a sable palm tree. We still have the Native American without the feather, and she's still throwing flowers on the ground. The steamboat's still there. It's been in all three iterations, but they say probably undergone several repairs since the original one. But the interesting thing is, if you're serving in the house is a little bit different from that seal. They don't even show "In God We Trust." So what do you think about this imagery of using Native Americans? Of course, the original sin of this country was the removing of the Native Americans from their,
right.
Whether you realize it or not, we in Florida, as well as most of the country, are in occupied territory. The white Europeans came in and displaced the Native Americans.
Right.
Again, this goes back to not changing history, but it just seems to be an ugly reminder that, oh yes, those were the indigenous people that we took the land from. What's your feeling on that? Do you think?
Well, again, we've changed it 3 times, right? There have been 3 changes as time has gone on. Leaders have realized that, things weren't accurately being depicted. Make changes, make changes, make changes. I think we're in one of those periods of time where we're evaluating all of these symbols around our country, all of the statues and the flags and the murals and the things that depict history. That, the depiction in and of itself isn't a necessarily an embracement of what happened, and those images have relevance in terms of museums and things like that. But as we progress as a species, as a country, let's embrace things that are more inclusive. And I don't think we try to pretend that we had tragedy in our past, in our history. We've again, to discuss your first comment, the first sin of displacing Native Americans and massacring large populations. Yeah, we can't ever undo any of that that was done, but we still need to learn from all of those things. The seal is, there are some beautiful murals on the House floor that were done that depict early Native American life that I believe are very accurate. And so I think the country is going to start embracing these changes. Florida certainly should be doing the same. Anything we can do to make sure that we are feeling and expressing inclusivity for all people.
Okay, just to wrap up this subject, you mentioned museums, and of course, we know there's a lot of problems with statues being torn down.
Yes.
American Museum of Natural History, a museum that I know very well because I'm a native New Yorker, and I think one of my first class trips was to this museum to see all of the dioramas of prehistoric life and the dinosaurs and so on and so forth. And one of the families that was responsible for this museum was the family of Theodore Roosevelt, the former president. And in front of the museum is a equestrian statue of Theodore Roosevelt, which nobody seems to mind that, but standing alongside of him, it's not too evident in this photo, it's not a close-up. There's a Native American and an American black. And the fact that they're walking alongside Roosevelt and the horse is supposed to be that they're or inferior or somehow not as good. And this is the basis for the city of New York's decision to take down this very old statue. And it even has the approval of the descendants of Theodore Roosevelt. So what do you think about that? By the way, this group that's protesting the removal, this is like from yesterday, it's a very current photo. It's largely a Republican club, or I should say a Republican that obviously Teddy Roosevelt was a Republican. So do you think this is taking it too far, President Roosevelt, and generally in statues, what do you think about that?
So I don't think anything I've said previously changes in this situation either. There's much to laud about different presidents in our history. The fact that whether I interpret that statue as depicting African Americans or Black people or Native Americans as inferior because they are not also on horseback, or if there's a large enough population that it offends, then let's have that conversation and let's make some changes. I just don't know why we feel so much consternation as a population that everything has to stay the way it's always been. It just doesn't make sense to me. Even if it weren't viewed as controversial, why aren't we changing things out and lauding more people who've done great things more currently in our more current history? I think that there's just a level of fear that think that if you change this, you change something about the fabric of America that I just think is unfounded.
Right. By the way, I meant to mention it before. The supermarket chain Winn-Dixie, their guns, they're not changed. They're not dropping the Dixie. So when I was a kid growing up, we used to buy ice cream in small cups called Dixie cups, and I never, at the time, I think it was a cup company was named Dixie. But anyway, all right, let's move on. Let's talk about endorsements. By the way, failed to mention this so far. You are running as a Democrat, of course.
I am.
Have you ever not been a Democrat? What's your history?
No.
Lifelong Democrat.
I would say probably in my early years, I was an independent. I've never been a Republican. I at 18 was an independent, and I'm actually not sure at what point after that I became a Democrat, but in my early life.
Okay.
And I've been a Democrat ever since.
Of course, and you're running in the primary, and this is a closed primary, is it not?
Yes, there are also 2 Republicans running in the primary for this seat as well. So the winner of each primary will go against each other for the seat.
Right. What do you think about that system in Florida? And I think if I can say, if there were no Republicans that were declared, and it was just you and your opponent, who, by the way, we can use his name, it's Michael Weinstein, that would be then an open primary on the theory that if a Republican or a nonpartisan would deny the right to vote in the August 18th primary, the race would be over by August 19th. Whoever wins the primary would be our next elected official. So they allow for that system of making it into an open primary if there's no November contest with an opposing party. The problem is there's been abuse of that system. All someone has to do is
Write-in candidate loophole.
or write-in candidate. You're familiar with that. So let's talk about that. Do you think that there's a need for reform here? Do you think that everybody should be allowed? Obviously, in South Florida, it's almost always a Democrat that gets elected. It's almost a foregone conclusion. Do you think that we need to change the primary system and open it to all voters and stop? How do you feel about that?
So I think that the way that the district lines are drawn are intentional by the party in power to concentrate voters. So the Democratic seats are the Democratic seats, and the Republican seats are the Republican seats, and there are very few that are left competitive. This is one of the Democratic seats. The fact is that no Republican has ever represented this particular geographic area. So if there is no other candidate running except 2 Democrats, then the people who live there have a right to participate in choosing their elected official. That's my opinion.
Sure.
I support the open primary. I think that the fact that you're a registered independent or no party affiliation or Republican precludes you from participating at all in the voting process is not inherently fair. And so yeah, I support the open primary. I get the loophole that Dave Ehrenberg has been fighting against for a number of years now.
Have I lost audio here?
I hear you.
Let's see. I don't know if I have it.
Do you not hear me?
Say something, if you will.
I hear you. Test, test, test.
Back. I don't think it affected the recording. I think my speaker just cut out for whatever reason.
Okay.
Okay. Let's talk about now who's supporting you and your endorsements. I know you've got quite a laundry list. I have it over here on the side.
Well, I don't have it in front of me, so I hope I
I
don't leave
do.
anybody out, but I have a number of state senators,
Well, let me read
Senator
the list.
Rader,
I have it here. I have it here.
okay, Senator Rader, Senator
I-
Berman, former Senator Joe Abruzzo, Senator Bobby Powell, Senator Perry Thurston, State Representative Matt Wilhite, State Representative Joe Casello, Tax Collector Ann Gannon, County Commissioner Mary Lou Berger, School Board Member Karen Brill, former Congressman Ron Klein. I have a number of organizations that have also endorsed the Ruth's List, Florida, Planned Parenthood, the Palm Beach County Human Rights Council, the AFL-CIO, the Classroom Teachers Association, the Florida Education Association, and I think I might have gotten everyone. We are still in the process of going through candidate screenings and awaiting some additional endorsements as well.
All right. Now, when I asked your opponent that question a couple of weeks ago, at that time he didn't have any endorsements, but he told he had a major endorsement coming up, and that's since been disclosed, and that would be former Senator Bill Nelson. That's the only endorsement that he seems to have as of now, although I spoke to him a little earlier this morning. He said he's working on a couple of organizations. I don't want to mention their names just yet because I don't know if they're locked in. I don't want to spook the deal, as they say. What does that tell you? That you have the overwhelming support of, shall we call it, the South Florida political establishment, and your opponent only has one person who was a statewide officer, and obviously he lost to Governor.
Well, Senator Nelson is a wonderful public servant and served the state of Florida extraordinarily well. He and his wife Grace are just wonderful people, and they have a relationship with Michael's parents, and so I understand that. I'm not sure they have a relationship with Michael, but you know, those ties are deep. My relationships are current. I have built these relationships with these folks and these organizations over decades of working with them, over decades of working on issues and passing legislation and fighting legislation, which is what the minority position really is mostly about, is fighting bad things. And so they are a witness to my leadership style, my effectiveness, my energy, and that's why they're supportive. And they know that I have a very strong grasp of the issues, and I'm very knowledgeable about the legislative process. So, you know, we are working on this together. Endorsements don't win elections, of course, but it is very telling to a lot of people, and it helps us deliver the message to a broader group of people that there's a tremendous amount of support for this campaign.
Okay. Just having a little issue here with my, can you just give me a few words here?
Test, 1, 2, 3.
Okay, got you. Okay, I switched out to my traditional.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
No problem.
This whole Zoom thing. Now, endorsements are very open and public, and everybody knows about that. Let's talk a little bit about behind the scenes. You are being represented in your campaign by one of the top advisors in South Florida, Eric Johnson. Now, when I interviewed your opponent, Michael Weinstein, a few weeks ago, he mentioned that originally being supported by Eric Johnson. As soon as you entered the race, he left the Weinstein campaign and went to the Skidmore campaign. What can you tell us? And by the way, he also says that one of the key reasons that he entered the race was that the encouragement of his, what he described as his friend, I don't know if it's still his friend, but Eric Johnson. So you've had an occasion to work with Mr. Johnson for a while now. What can you tell us from an inside point of view? What happened there? Why did somebody like Johnson, that was a longtime friend of Weinstein, why did he bolt the campaign? I mean, obviously, the upfront answer is he thought you were a better candidate, but can you give us any insight on that?
Sure. So I don't, Eric did, and Mr. Weinstein did not have a signed agreement. They had begun to work together. Eric and I have a history of working together. He is a very, very talented political consultant, a very keen political mind. He is definitely one of the best in South Florida, if not Florida. And there were some other reasons that he felt there was a conflict with working with Michael. It made the decision easy for him because we had a former relationship. I don't think there are any hard feelings between Mr. Johnson and Mr. Weinstein. It was a decision that was made, and I'm just pleased to have a very solid team working behind me, working with me.
All right. Now, there are two people well known to the general public that seem to be very much behind your opponent's candidacy. And I've spoken to both of them, and I can say firsthand that I know that they were looking for the Village Sentry to support your opponent, Michael Weinstein. And those two people would be Howard Weiss of the law Weiss and Handler, which is a major real estate condominium law firm. And then the other person is my good friend, Andre Fladell, Brooklyn, as I am. He's the same age as I am. We're both from Brooklyn. And we had a common link in that I used to videotape his dad when I lived in North Shore Towers, who was quite a musician and ran a North Shore Towers orchestra. What can you tell us? There are a lot of people that say in order to elect Florida, you can't do it without the support of Howie Weiss and Andre Fladell. Andre, by the way, is not an elected official, nor is Howard. Andre has got the title of the Prince of Palm Beach County. There's actually a street named after him in Delray Beach. It's not a very large street. I think it goes just from Dixie Highway to Federal. He's called the South Florida political operative. And what can you tell us about that? At one time, when Aronson, the late County Commissioner Aronson, was alive, he was described to me when I was still wet behind the ears as the godfather of, not in a criminal sense, but just in the tremendous power that he
Sure.
Andre was, of course, the Prince of Palm Beach County, and Howard Weiss was called the Consigliere, to continue the organized crime analogy. What can you tell us about these folks that are really behind the scenes? Do we need to know more about them? Do they wield too much power?
So Andre has his fingerprints and thumbprint on so many things that have happened in South Florida, so many organizations, so many people who have been elected. You know, he definitely is a force. But in 2006, when I ran the first time, I was on the other side of Commissioner Aronson and Andre and Howard, and I still won 2 elections without their help. I plan on winning this one without their help. Look, we all accept any help that we can get. And so Howard and Andre have chosen Michael Weinstein to be the candidate they're helping, while pretty much everyone else in South County has chosen to support this campaign. So we will fight a good competitive race, and you know, at the end of the day, we'll see who wins. I hope that it's me. I'm working hard to make sure that it is me. But sure. You know, everyone's entitled to support the candidate they want, that they think is going to do the best job. And at the end of the day, you shake hands and you all work together. And that's what I plan to do.
Okay, good answer. You live approximately on Palmetto and Power Line, I believe,
Correct.
which is outside the district that you're seeking office in. Let's talk about rules. First of all, what are the rules about residency? Very simply, what are the rules?
The rule is that you must live or reside in the district you represent at the time that you are sworn into office, which would be in November.
Okay, so obviously you're not in our district just yet. You are elected, or shall I say, and I said this to Michael, when you are elected, let's be.
Right.
What are your plans? What are you going to do to remedy that specifically?
Move. So it's a simple answer. I moved into District 90 when I was running for District 90. The fact of the matter is, outside the district is outside the district, and you can't quibble with that. During reapportionment, members of the House and Senate have had the district line drawn around their house to make sure that they couldn't run for a seat. You're outside the district, you're outside the district. But the fact of the matter is that the issues that are affecting
We got a little freeze here on you now. Can you hear me?
just on the other side of 441, and they are experiencing all the same issues. It's not like I am from another part of the state, that I'm from Ocala, or I'm from another state. And the other issue is when we are voting on policy, the policy impacts the entire state of Florida, everyone who lives in Florida. There are very few local bills that would impact just the county, and pretty much zero bills except for appropriations that would impact just the geographic area of District 81.
Right.
So most of our job is to pass good legislation for the entire state or fight off bad legislation for the entire state. But it's a simple fact that you must live in the district by the time you're sworn in. I'm fortunate, my husband and I will celebrate our 33rd wedding anniversary in October. And my daughter has been, who normally lives in Brooklyn, has been home for a number of months because of the pandemic. And she's walking around our house, our 3,000 square foot house, and saying, I hope you guys are going to get rid of all this stuff because I don't want it. And you need to start scaling back, and you need to, start scaling down. So that has been our intent for a number of months now. Regardless of running for office, we are at the point in time where we no longer need significant space and, lots of kids coming over and things like that. So it's a great time to make the change. And as soon as we are done with this election and the pandemic allows us to, we'll definitely be moving into the district before I'm sworn in.
All right. Now, by the way, I looked at Google Maps this morning. You could walk to the district from your home.
It's very close.
What's it, about a mile and a half, 2 miles?
It's about a mile and a half.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's really, so the question is, I checked on the property appraiser page. You are taking a homestead exemption. That's your only home.
Correct.
Right.
I did have some other properties years ago, but this is my husband and I only own this real estate.
Okay. So you're not going to keep you would sell it, put it on the market, and you're planning, for example,
that's the plan.
County Commissioner Mary Lou Berger has a home outside the district in which she ran, which is District 5, and she took a home in Kings Point to meet the residency rule, and she never gave up that home. Are you going to do the same thing, maintain both, or you're just going to make your...
That is not the plan. My intent is to reside in the district when I am sworn in. If I have not been able to effectively sell this home and it's still my home, I will still be residing until I am able to do that. I can't crystal ball it to say that, during this very difficult time that we'll be able to do all the things I need to do before November. but certainly that is the intent, that I will move permanently into the district, which, as you said, is a mile and a half away. So it's not a huge leap.
So you don't have any special tie to your current home, like your grandfather?
I've lived here for almost 17 years. So, yeah, of course, it's been my home for 17 years.
Right.
I've lived in Boca Raton since 1984. I've lived in South Florida since 1972. South Florida is my home. Certainly this is a point in time where there's an opportunity to scale back, and this is a great impetus for making that happen.
Sure. Now, what can you tell us about the style of campaigning now during the COVID crisis compared to the past? How have you had to make adjustments? Obviously, we have a mailer here from you, and we have one from your opponent. Obviously, because you're not going to be able to get out there and go to shopping centers and press the flesh, as they used to say in Bill Clinton's era, these so-called mailers or political advertisements sent through the mail are going to play a very large part.
Sure.
Expensive to do them.
It is, yes. So you need to target the people who vote. You need to, try and narrow it down to get your message to those folks who are ready to accept that message and make a decision. So it will be through direct mail. It will be through phone banking and telephone calls. Many people in our community love a personal call. They, love to talk to the candidate, love to talk to volunteers to learn more about the candidate. We will be doing digital media advertising. The ability to get in front of a large group of people doesn't exist. So, Century Village Democratic Club isn't meeting. The associations like West Boca Community Council and Delray Alliance and the Coalition of West Boynton Residential Associations, those have been great meeting places to get up and speak and explain your positions and attract support. Those don't exist right now, but I've been very impressed with the way that so many individuals and organizations have embraced technology and found out ways for us to stay connected, just like you and I are doing right now on this Zoom call. Zoom it's like one of those words that was always in the lexicon, but now it means something completely different than it did before. And so I'm very impressed that people have found ways for us to be able to stay connected. And we're doing all the things that we need to reach our voters and get our message out. And it is very different. We do need finances to do that. I grew up, as I said a minute ago, in South Florida. I was born in Cleveland, Ohio, but my family moved here in 1972. I went to Deerfield Beach elementary, middle, and high school. I went away to the University of Florida. I didn't graduate from there, but because of health issues. But we're a blue collar family. We've worked hard all our lives for everything that we've ever had, and that's what I'm doing. I'm working hard. I'm raising money. I don't have a big cash bank account that I can deposit. And if I did have that kind of money, I'm not sure that it's not a matter of not being sure. I wouldn't use it for this purpose. I think that it's important to have the support of the organizations that are in our communities, the individuals in our communities, and you need to raise the money to be able to get your message out. And I think that that's important.
Now, staying on the subject of finances for a moment, this is an article. You can read the words. It's reading correct because on my monitor, everything's a mirror image, but you can read it, right?
Yep.
Weinstein's, what does it say? Silence or misrepresentation of fundraising margins says a lot. And this is from a South Florida blog called Florida Poll or Flop Poll. And You're familiar with this article, are you not?
I've seen it, yes.
Right. What the article purports to say is that he's saying he's outraised you by a large factor. And the article points out that about half of his funds to date are self-funded or family funds. With that,
Yes.
that about half of the money is coming. He wrote two loans, I think $25 and $10,000 to his campaign. I think he's somewhere around the 60, maybe he's up to 70 by now. He's getting a lot of money. And where are you at right now? How much have you raised?
I'm showing on the website right now. Oh my gosh, 18,000, I think. I've raised another 12 since then. So I am raising enough to be competitive in this race. There are a lot of commitments that are still out there. You know, it's again very difficult to raise money in a pandemic, being sensitive to folks who are hurting, who are financially in a different situation than they were 6 months ago. So we are doing all the things that we need to have to meet our budget goals. We anticipate needing about $90,000 to win this race, and we definitely have all of that in commitments, even though it may not show on a report. So it's important to me to earn this seat. It's, you know, I definitely identify more with a Joe Biden than a Donald Trump, and that work ethic, and so that's how I plan to continue on my strategy.
Okay. How much of the money that you've raised comes from loans that you or your family, or donations from your family?
I have no loans, no personal loans. My husband was kind enough to give me a $500 contribution, and my father was kind enough to give me a $500 contribution.
All right. So to contrast it with your opponent, it's just a total amount of your fundraising is from your family. Or
we all need to use our strengths, right, to get elected. I think that Michael's strength is his family, but that doesn't translate to Michael. I think my strength is what I have done personally, the community service, the number of boards of directors I've served on, the community relations committee of Boca Raton, you know, all the different not-for-profit organizations that I've supported over the years as a board member. There is a lot there. I have a lot of history. My parents don't. My parents don't have a lot of history. My siblings don't have a lot of history. Everything that I show on my resume, on my record, is what I have done. And I think that that's an important distinction for people.
Sure. What other agencies have you worked for? Well, let me put it to you like this. Who are you working for currently? Let's start with that.
I am a public relations specialist for the Marine Industries Association of South Florida, which is a trade association of marine businesses. It's about 500 marine businesses, a $12 billion industry, and in South Florida, about 142,000 jobs in the marine industry.
If elected, or when elected, whichever you prefer, will you remain on their payroll, or?
Yes. So the legislature is a part-time position. As you know, we are constitutionally bound to meet for 60 days after the first Tuesday, after the first Monday in March. Although we change that in different years, in election years and reapportionment years, to start in January. So we are collectively together for 2 months. There are a lot of committee meetings that are spread out from November through February, for the most part, when we start in March. And so unless you're independently wealthy, you need to have a job. So we have doctors and lawyers and teachers and insurance salesmen and funeral parlor owners and everything you can imagine. It's a representative government.
All right. I was given information by somebody that's obviously in support of your opponent, that the has donated to Republicans.
I'm sorry, can you say that again, Fred? You broke up a little bit.
Yeah, sure. It's been told to me by supporters of your opponent that you work for the Marine, whatever it is, that they have donated to Republicans. Is there any truth to that? And if so, is there any relevance to you and your
So, I want to be very careful here. The Marine Industries Association of South Florida does not have a PAC. It does not donate. It hasn't donated to me. It hasn't donated to anyone. There are other associations throughout the state that I would imagine donate to elected officials in their areas, which they have every right to do. So the association is not political in any way, and I want to make sure we keep it that way. This is where I work. Does not politicize that workplace. All that the Marine Industries Association of South Florida is promoting boating, recreational boating, and boating lifestyles. The fact that I work there does not change anything about that association, and nor should it.
Okay, now you mentioned, you said a phrase before, unless you're independently wealthy. There's another candidate running in this area. His name is Irv Schlossberg, and he's already doing a lot of television buys. Well, I don't know about a lot, but somebody I know said they saw one of his TV spots. As you probably know, he ran unsuccessfully 2 years ago up in former Senator Clemens's district, and I believe, according to the website, that he put $2 million of his own money into that, largely into saturation advertising on all of the local television stations and news programs. And starting to see TV spots from Schlossberg right now. By the way, just as a matter of disclosure, we should state that you did run unsuccessfully Emily Schlossberg 2 years ago. Is that correct? Right.
Yes.
So my question is, do you think that people that have millions of dollars, and another example would be like Michael Bloomberg with billions of dollars, do you think it's fair that somebody with almost unlimited resources, like a Bloomberg or a Schlossberg, in effect can buy the seat through the amount of media purchases? Or do you think that there should be limits to how much can be spent, or maybe something with matching funds? What? It's obviously you can't run as a pauper. You have to have some money. What's the story on that? And are we just going to be electing people of wealth and neglecting the Abe Lincoln log cabin types? And that's not a Republican plug, but that is his heritage.
So, you have a right to spend your money the way you want to spend it. If you want to give $2 million to a charity, if you want to give, $35 million to your campaign, then you have the right to do those things. It's not for me to say you can't. Is it the right thing to do? Is it the best thing to do? No, in my opinion, it isn't. I think that it's a skirt around of earning the people's vote and of earning the ability to get your message out. But do I want to say that people can't spend their money the way they want to? That would be like saying, if I pay my car mechanic, I want to make sure that he doesn't go buy beer with the money that I get. Like, I can't control that, nor would I want to. People have the right to spend their money the way they want. If Mr. Schlossberg wants to spend another portion of his fortune on losing a campaign or winning a campaign, whichever the case may be, it's his right to do that.
Well, I certainly agree that you have a right to spend your money the way you want, but we do have what they call campaign finance laws. For example, as an individual, limited to, I think, $1,000 contribution, that can be limited.
Yeah.
But to be in favor of a law that states that caps the amount of money that can be
I
spent?
think that's a legitimate conversation to have, that caps the amount of money that an individual can put into his or her own race.
Yeah. Now, by the way, is there any reason why you decided to run in this district, going against Emily Schlossberg? I assume you're still in her district right now?
Sure, I still live in what was District 90, is now 91. Yeah, it became an open seat unexpectedly, and I had an abundance of local leaders who encouraged me to run for the seat, having represented a good portion of it previously in the legislature. And you know, this is going to sound corny, but I had had a conversation in late May with someone who is a mentor of mine, and it was when I hung up the phone, I looked at my husband and I said, I just had the most remarkable healthcare policy conversation that it just brings me such joy to be able to have this articulate conversation. And I've got to figure out a way where I can go back to doing what I know how to do in serving my community. And I don't know what it looks like, and I don't know how I'm going to get there. And 3 days later, people started calling and saying, hey, there's an open seat, and you should really consider running for it. And so I thought, you know, you ask the universe for something, and sometimes it answers. And the opportunity seemed like the right fit for me. Again, my house is outside the district line, and I understand that the law is the law, but it is not so far out of the realm that I haven't represented this district, that I haven't been out to the Glades, that I haven't been going out to that area since 1996 when I started working in this process, and that I don't know the issues better than almost anybody, having done it for longer than most people. So, you know, that's it.
Sure. Now, let's just cover just a little bit take a little pause and just get into some of the dates that we got coming up now. August 18th is the Florida primary, and there will be voting at your polling place. There are, I believe, at least a dozen on the 18th, and the polls are open from 7 to 7. Now, in addition, there's early voting, and I'm looking at the supervisor's webpage right now, and it's August 3rd, which is a Monday, through Sunday, August 16th, from 10 to 7. And during early voting, you're allowed to vote anywhere in Palm Beach County. You don't have to go to your home polling place. Now, but there's a third method of voting called vote by mail. Now, recently, the president, I'm talking about Donald Trump, stated that you shouldn't do vote by mail, but that absentee voting is okay, which, you know, I kind of banged my head on that one because as far as I'm concerned, they're one and the same. In fact,
Bit of a contradiction.
Vote by mail is only the latest term, what they used to call absentee voting. Absentee voting used to be associated with people that are physically incapacitated or people that are serving in the armed forces, and they would send an absentee ballot. In an attempt to make it more normal sounding, the election people have renamed it VBM, vote by mail. What do you feel about vote by mail? Do you, especially now with the COVID crisis, have you ever voted by mail? And
I only vote by mail. Ever since we changed the rules to not be absentee, that you could actually be physically in your home and vote by mail. I love voting by mail. I'm not rushed. I can do it at midnight. I can do it at 6 in the morning. I can do it in my pajamas. It also gives me an opportunity to look up candidates that I may not be familiar with and see what their positions are if I haven't received any mail. You know, it's hard. Judicial candidates are sometimes very challenging because they are limited in their ability to campaign. So it's important to be able to take my time when I vote. And those are some of the reasons why I love voting by mail. It's convenient, it's easy, And I know my vote's going to get counted.
Now, as far as convenient and easy, Palm Beach County has done something new this year for vote by mail. Are you familiar with what they've done? They've changed it a little.
Do you mean the postage?
That's it. That's it.
Yes.
It used to be something like $1.61 or something, because it depends on the weight. But ever since the current election supervisor, Wendy Link, came in, she has copied the model that I guess Broward County did in giving prepaid or free postage.
Right.
Good idea, obviously.
Yeah, I think that it is. It's whatever obstacles we can remove that makes it easy for people to vote. I know there are people who really have feel that they have to go to the voting booth on election day, that it's very important to them, and I respect that. I want people to be safe. I want the social distancing and the public requirement of masks, and I want all of those safeguards in place for voters on election day and during early voting. But to make it as easy as possible and allow for those votes or those ballots to be returned postage paid, I think is a wonderful thing for us to do.
Sure. Now, for those of you that are watching this at home, you have already voted by mail, then you should be enrolled automatically to be receiving a mail ballot. By the way, the mail ballots are going out. Just check the calendar. The statute requires that they be mailed between 4 and 5 weeks in advance of the election, which again is August 18th. So I think that the ballots are going out around the 14th of July. So it's just about 2 weeks from now. Now, time to obtain a mail ballot. If you haven't already enrolled in the vote by mail program, you can call the following number, and I'll repeat it. It's 561-656-6200. 561-656-6200. And that's the Palm Beach County Supervisor's Office. And you just identify yourself, your name and address, and they will vote by mail program. Also, when you do vote by mail, and I tested this in the presidential preference primary, I mailed my ballot in on, let's just say, a Tuesday, arbitrarily. The next day, Wednesday evening, I went on to the Palm Beach County Elections website, and there is a place that you can confirm receipt of your mail ballot. So I want folks to know that when you put that mail ballot in the mailbox, you're just not left hanging. Do they receive it or so on? Within a day or two, depending on, of course, the mail, got it the very next day, you can call up and find out if they received your ballot. So I think it's a good idea. And obviously, in the light of the COVID crisis, I think people should to vote by mail. Now,
Definitely should consider it.
now, just to get a little plug for your campaign, donate to Kelly Skidmore's election campaign that you can log on to.
It's skidmoreforstatehouse.com. That's the website. There's also a Facebook page, just Kelly Skidmore.
Okay. And there's a form on there that says contribute.
Yes, there's a contribution button. There's a volunteer sign up. There's an email contact. There's some background and some priorities, legislative priorities, all there.
All right, we're almost at the end of this. I just have one or two other questions relating to your first 2 terms, hopefully not your only 2 terms in the legislature. Why did you pass only 1 bill? Please correct it. During 4 years as a state rep, when other reps passed several bills a year. Is that, first of all, an accurate statement?
No.
Okay, tell us, what is your
So first of all, let me lay the groundwork a little bit. The Democrats are in the minority. I've never been in the legislature when the Democrats were in the majority. A big part of our job is to fight off the bad things. We mentioned prayer in school. There are all women's reproductive health freedoms, public education, transportation, economic development, their insurance. A lot of our job is to keep the leadership from passing bad legislation. So I'm not sure if Michael didn't do his homework or if he had somebody else do his homework and they did it wrong. But it's easy to go on to myfloridahouse.gov and see what bills.
We have a little bit of a freeze here, so you may have to repeat that. I hope we get you back.
Public Health Institute, that was it strengthened the healthcare safety net and community health. House bill, I'm sorry.
We lost you. It froze for a second.
Okay. All right, am I back?
If Michael didn't do his homework properly, and folks can log on and take it from there.
Log on to myfloridahouse.gov and you'll be able to see every piece of legislation that anyone has filed. You go back to 2006, you can do it by year, you can see everything that I have filed. So I passed 3 pieces of legislation that were standalone bills. I've passed countless amendments because if you don't care who gets the credit and you just want to get something done, you have to work within the framework that's there. And quite honestly, the Republican leadership does not want Democrats to pass bills. That is not something that is, on their priority list. So I pass priorities a number of ways, through standalone legislative bills, through amendments onto other bills that are moving, and through something called proviso language in the budget. And these are the ways that you can get things done as a member of the minority party. I also pass bills that I know are not going to get heard because it continues the conversation. So I co-sponsored bills with a number of people who filed the repeal on the ban on gay adoption. And, we never got that legislation passed, but the Supreme Court made a decision, and it was the right decision. And the reason they had the ability to do that was because we kept the conversation going. And one of those bills that I sponsored every year that I was in the legislature was the Competitive Workforce Act, which gave protected status to the LGBTQ plus community in jobs and in housing. And we never passed that bill, but guess what just happened? The Supreme Court made the decision that you can't discriminate against LGBTQ people in employment. And so we keep doing those things because we have to keep the dialogue going. But to say that I only passed, actually, I think that he said I never passed a bill. He needs to do a better job on his homework, and he needs to understand what the process is and how you get things done. And if you want your name on it every time, you're going to be disappointed.
Okay. What about the budgets? You were talking about the budgets. Is it true that you voted no on multiple state budgets?
It is.
Had funding in place for local priorities? And if so, why did you do that?
So from 2006 through 2010, we were in the recession. We only had cut budgets. And I voted no, as all of my Democratic colleagues did, on every budget because of the cuts that were made. The cuts that were made to public education, the cuts that were made to state employees, the cuts that were made to healthcare, the Department of Health, and how that trickles down to the local county departments of health, the cuts that were made there. So yeah, I opposed those bills, and I opposed the priorities that the legislature made in making sure we had tax cuts for corporations, but we were making cuts to public education. And so those are difficult decisions. When I went from being a legislative aide to being elected, I thought I had done almost everything in the job as an aide for 10 years. But pushing that button is a completely different scenario. And I take it very, very seriously. And it's a huge responsibility. And I did not feel comfortable voting for budgets that I thought had the priorities of the state of Florida upside down.
Sure. One thing we've neglected in this interview is environment. One of my key issues, obviously I'm a senior, I'm 71. I lived in New York, which is probably pollution capital of America. I lived in Queens between LaGuardia and Kennedy. So, you know, my favorite floral scent was kerosene, which is refined aviation fuel, and so on and so forth. When I came down here, I wanted to obviously concentrate on healthy lifestyle and living to a ripe old age. And one of the things that I brought with me is my 1976 Peugeot 10-speed. And when riding my bicycle around during usually the winter months, I became aware of this foul smell in the air. I did some investigation, and it turned out to be what they call pre-harvest. Not all of them, of course, but a large portion of these smells came from pre-harvest sugarcane. Now, very briefly, sugarcane is the largest cash crop in Florida. It's bigger than all the cash crops. We're not advocating that we outlaw something that's such an integral part of Florida's economy. But the method of harvesting, which is very favorable to the sugarcane industry, is to burn the outer leaf by setting it on fire in what they call controlled burns in small fields. And 20 minutes later, there's nothing left but the stalks of cane, which can then be harvested mechanically without polluted by sugar leaf, which has no sugar. It's just a wrap. The problem with this technique is that it's very much against the environment. It produces smoke, ash, volatile organic compounds, so on and so forth. There's pesticides that have been sprayed on the now burn up, so we have all kinds of chemicals in the air, and these things drift 50 away depending on the prevailing wind. That's why I came away, even though I'm about 40 miles from the south shore of Lake Okeechobee, which is the predominant sugar growing area. It did affect me, and I found it very difficult to ride my bicycle in those days. So I've been devoting my time and energy to reforming that industry, not eliminating it. We know there's a lot of jobs, and you're going to be representing a lot of constituents that depend on those jobs. But there's such a thing as green harvest. It's being done in Brazil, it's being done in Australia, and I believe Louisiana, which is another important sugar growing state. There aren't too many. Hawaii gave it up years ago because of the impact on tourism from the burning of the sugar. So Florida is very susceptible to sea level rise, and that's a huge for us. We know what happens on these king tides. You find octopuses swimming on Alton Drive in the Miami Beach area. And obviously anything that we burn, whether it's tailpipe emissions or fire prevention, which are obviously a necessary evil. They have to sometimes do controlled burns to prevent major wildfires. But these agricultural burns, they can be replaced by green harvest. Are you familiar with this subject? Do you think that the industry needs to, and by the way, there is a class action lawsuit that one of your supporters, former Senator Abruzzo, has partnered with a law firm, and they're trying to, through the judiciary, eliminate or at least enjoin these controlled burns of sugar. What's your standing on that? And would you accept any donations from an industry that is so responsible for environmental harm, both to the air and also to the waterways with these algae? Talk a little about the sugar industry. It's a big industry, and a lot of your constituents make a living there. Please.
Yeah, so this is, this is not a new issue. The sugar industry has made significant changes in the way that its production works out in the glades. They have met all manner of requirements for the pollution, for a number of things. They now make different products out of the pulp, and yeah, you know, they have always been willing, in my previous experience, to come to the table and look at ways to do things better. Where they are now with the greening that you mentioned, I do not know. But I know that as I have worked with them and over the past 20 years, they've tried valiantly to do the responsible thing. The fact of the matter is, the Glades has the highest unemployment area, is the highest unemployment area in the United States. And so to take jobs away from them by making it too difficult for sugar growers to be able to harvest is not something that I want to be, you know, at the forefront of by any stretch of the imagination. There are all manner of ways in which we can work together to find the changes, but I don't think that sugar is the only contributor to the problem that we have. We've got a lot of cattle. We've got also, you think about Wellington, you think about Weston. They were built over the Everglades. Those communities, some of them in the more rural areas, are still on septic. There are a lot of contributors, including you know, as the phosphorus comes off Lake Okeechobee and is pushed out into the lagoons, that create the algae, the blue-green algae, and the red tide. So we should be looking at all of those things collectively. We did have a chief resilience officer. She was employed for about 6 months before she left for a gig at the White House. She hasn't been replaced. We have a chief science officer that was appointed. He recently took another job at the University of South Florida as the Dean of Marine Sciences. So he's preoccupied. So we need someone who's looking, we need someone at the state level who's looking at all of these things. We don't talk about the blue economy in the state of Florida. The blue economy is exploding all over the country and all over the world. Norway and Portugal and Ireland and North and South Korea even are participating in the blue economy. And Florida has the Gulf, the Atlantic, Lake Okeechobee, estuaries, springs, rivers, and we are not taking advantage of those things because we have no one leading the charge. And so there are a number of things that we could be doing. I think the sugar industry has been making a lot of changes that they have been able to do so far. But the community relies on that industry right now. And until we can find a way to replace that with something that you know, is as viable, then we need to make sure that those jobs stay there. You know, I think that there are opportunities for economic diversity that we haven't embraced, that we haven't investigated. But I don't think that it's fair to put all of that, whatever, you know, everything has been the responsibility of the sugar growers. Do they bear some part of it? Sure, as we all do, and let's find the solutions. But I don't think that, you know, I don't know enough about the greening process that you spoke of. If it's cost effective, if it makes more jobs, if there's an opportunity to have that conversation with the growers, I'd be happy to have that conversation with the growers. But I don't know enough about that particular process. But I think that they have been at the table and working hard to try and make changes. And from what I understand, the ash of today is significantly less than the ash of a few years ago. So I think progress is being made, and maybe there are more things we can do to continue.
Just, you know, not to belabor the point, you talk about we don't want to do anything to lose jobs. Doesn't lose jobs. If anything, because it's more labor intensive than just burning the fields, would actually create jobs. It costs more to harvest, obviously. The sugar industry is not doing a procedure that's costing them money, a procedure that's maximizing their profits. The moral question is, how the enough profit, and at what cost. One of the problems that we all bear some responsibility for kind of is this whole concept of when the sugar industry was allowed to do the burns. Now, I'm not talking about since Nikki Fried came in. I know there's been some changes made, but up until last year, there was a, and they worked with the Florida Forestry Service of checking the wind before they do a burn. And when the wind blew, you mentioned Wellington, of course, when the wind blew east toward white communities, they were not allowed to do the burns. When it was blowing toward the west or towards the communities around Lake O, they were allowed to do the burns. This actually was a form of institutionalized racism. I mean, we have a Black Lives Movement. Maybe there should be a Black Lungs Matter, not just Black Lives Matter, because well, one of the points in the lawsuit is not only to stop the burns, but to provide forward-going medical monitoring of all of the people who have been impacted. I know Senator Abruzzo told me an anecdote that he was once paying a visit to a constituent, and the man had his 4-year-old or 6-year-old, I'm not sure, locked up in the family car with the air conditioner on full blast. He says, Senator Abruzzo, do this on burn days. My child was born with a bad asthma condition. We think it's directly related to living across from a sugar field. And unless we lock him up in the car because the seals of the doors, he'll have to go to the emergency room. So this is really, you know, it's not just a theoretical thing. So do you think that perhaps, and also be mindful of the fact that the federal government subsidizes the industry to the tune of $4 billion a year? Don't you think that we need to put health over profits and not destroy jobs, but just shave away a little bit of the profit, hire more people to do these green harvests? And by the way, there's a sugar field right next to Walmart up in the Glades. Maybe.
I'm sorry, say it again.
There's a sugarcane field adjacent to the Glades Walmart. I'm not sure whether it's South Bay or Pahokee or Belglade. I'm not sure where, but in one of those 3 cities, there's a Walmart, and it's right across the street from a sugar field. Supposedly, the sugar industry does do green harvest there because of the obvious public relations aspect of burning right next to a major shopping thing. So, you know, I think that we need to really get sugar to do the green harvest. If it's good enough for Australia, if it's good enough for Brazil, if it's good enough for Louisiana, if generate more jobs, not lose jobs, don't you think
Right.
put a little support into that green harvest? That's what it's all about, not burning.
Okay.
Yes.
So I think it's worthy of a conversation. I think that, again, the sugar growers have, you know, have come to the table over the years and made modifications. If this is one that is something that they can show that the community wants, that improves the economic condition of the Glades, let's have that conversation.
Okay. Right. At this point, I want to turn it over to you. You've been very responsive, and you want to make like a closing statement, remind people who you are, why you're running, why you think you'd be better than your opponent. By the way, before you get into that, can you say anything about what you think his best feature is and what his least desirable feature? Do you have any comment on him by way of improving?
Quite honestly, I don't know Michael. I don't know him. He hasn't been a part of any of the clubs, the Democratic clubs, or any of the groups that I've been a part of for a number of years. So I don't know much about him at all to be able to comment. You know, I think that's the biggest thing. I just don't know him.
Sure. Okay, fine. All right. So please, if you can you give us like a couple of minutes summary
Sure.
why the folks in Century Village, Boca Raton, Florida, should make you once again their state representative for now District 81. Take it away.
Great. Thank you. Thank you so much, Fred. And I love that you provide this program to your constituents who are your neighbors as well. This is an opportunity in a very challenging time for the globe, not just the United States and not just Florida. But my previous experience in the legislature is an advantage that I have heading into some very difficult decisions that we're going to have to be making. As I mentioned, the budget that any budget that I ever voted for was a cut budget, and there were some difficult decisions that were made. I think it's important to have that historic perspective going in and know where we need to protect jobs and where we need to protect the Department of Health and where we need to protect services so that we can keep our community safe. I started in this process in 1996 with Ron Klein. I've lived in Florida since 1972, in Boca Raton since 1984. I am a fixture in this community. I understand it and I know it well. I would love to be the representative, not because it's anything about me. It's because it's the way that I know how to give back. It's the way that I know how to serve my community. Constituent service is incredibly important to me, and it's incredibly important to the people of Sentry Village. I've heard time and time again how often people have said, you know, Tina's office has been super responsive, or Emily's office has answered our calls. It is incredibly important that you have someone who understands the legislative process and the process of constituent service. There is an opportunity that we have right here to elect someone who has the leadership, has the support of elected officials, actually from around the state. It's important that we have the local elected officials, but you know, I am someone that is effective in the legislature. I work with both sides. When I was elected previously, a lot of Democrats don't want to hear this, but you can't get anything done if you're not working with the other side. And my major piece of legislation, my sort of legacy bill, is the prescription drug monitoring program, which I sponsored along with two respected Republicans. And that was important in our ability to get that legislation passed. There's so much more that I participated in that, you know, maybe didn't have my name on it, because that's not what I care about. I care about getting the job done. I led my caucus on healthcare. I was the ranking Democratic member on healthcare policy, the ranking Democratic member on healthcare appropriations. I know my way around the Capitol. I have the relationships to get the job done. I would love to be able to serve the voters, the residents of District 81, as I have done before. I know I can do it from the very first day that I am elected and sworn in. So I would love to get your vote. Please visit my website for more information, skidmoreforstatehouse.com. Please send me an email at kskidmore@comcast.net if you have any questions. I'm looking forward to serving you for another long time so that we can get things done and we can protect our way of life. Thanks, Fred.
Okay, great. All right. This will conclude our interview with the lovely and talented Kelly Skidmore, who was a two-term up in Tallahassee, and she's now looking to get her third term in that wonderful institution. And again, the election, primary election day is August 18th. The polls are open from 7 to 7. You can early vote for Century Village or any of the polling places during early voting. It'll probably be at the library on State Road 7 near Skidmore. You should check the website. There could be a change on that. And the early voting is August 3rd through 16th. The hours are from 10 to 6. It's a little short of the voting day because it's almost 2 weeks. But by recommended method of voting will be vote by mail. Again, The number to get a vote by mail ballot is area code 561-656-6200. That's 656-6200. And no matter who you vote for, it's important that you vote this year, like it is every year, but especially now with what's going on in the world. And I just want to say thank you very much, Kelly.
Thank you.
Good luck, and we'll speak to you hopefully after you get elected, and I'm sure we'll have plenty of requests for help the folks here in Century Village, Boca Raton. So,
Again, it would be my honor. Thank you.
okay, bye-bye now.
Bye-bye.